Hello, this is Deborah Anderson, the Black Woman Animator, coming back to you with another video. And in this video, I have Kimson Albert. Welcome.
Salute. Thank you, Deborah.
So, my first question is, how was it growing up in a multicultural household? And how did art and animation have a play in that too?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So my background is my father is French, white French, and my mom was African American, born in New England. So she was a New England African American.
Yeah.
But my grandpa, her parents were from the South, and my father's parents were from all different parts of Europe, actually.
Okay.
So I grew up, with French influence, and I also grew up with the Black American influence. But both of my parents were writers, and they really connected on their love of art and music, especially and culture. So they were very prominent in certain artistic circles. So growing up, they always had artistic friends around. My dad's friends were all jazz musicians, and there was always creativity around. And my mom, actually growing up, my mother was a fashion model. She was a Ford model. And so I grew up around all these Black women models that were really, really positive influences. I always call them my superheroes because they were all, raising kids, and we were all these young Black kids, but being exposed to so much culture. So for me, I think my love of animation really, and I'm sure you've had this said before, really started with comic books. At the time when I was growing up, comic books were really an outlet for, young Black kids to see themselves bigger than what they were in their situation. And my imagination, I was an only child, so my imagination was everywhere.
Yeah.
And, comic books were just a thing. And so I started drawing when I was very, very young. And just sketching and doodling. And luckily, both my parents were very supportive of that. And even though they weren't together in the household, when I spent time with my dad and when I spent time with my mom, they were both very encouraging and creative in their own spaces. So I just kept drawing, and then as I got older, I realized I was really into animation young. Bugs Bunny, but then all the superhero stuff, all the Filmation stuff that would come out, and I knew it wasn't the best, I knew it wasn't quality, wasn't the best, but it was all I had, and it still provided me an outlet for me to dream and like think of superheroes and just be into a fantasy land. And so I would draw a lot of that. I would make my own comic books. It wasn't until I was about 9 that I realized that animation was actually a real possibility. Up until that point, I was just thinking of just drawing, like most 9-year-olds. You do your own comics and stuff. And but as a profession and as something I really wanted to do, it wasn't until about 9 or 10 where I started. I would sneak into like adult animation movies, like Heavy Metal. I think I saw Heavy Metal like 20 times in the theater.
Wow.
I would like sneak in with my friends, and my dad had taken me to see Fritz the Cat when I was like 4, So I was really impressed by the big animation on the big screen. Funny enough, I wasn't a Disney kid. The animation that I saw was really kind of counter, underground and counter culture and saying a lot more than the average cartoon that was on the TV. So I always knew that, animation was for adults and for kids. And so by the time I was that age, I really wanted to make those kind of movies. I wanted to, make animated films and that kind of stuff. And so kept drawing and kept going, kept my passion up. But basically the foundation of it was just being around artsy parents and supportive, very supportive artsy parents and having friends who were into it. Your community is everything. And a lot of my Black friends growing up we were really art oriented, drawing a lot. And being in New York at the time was very multicultural as well. So there were a lot of influences, and that's what kind of helped me figure out my path artistically.
Yeah. So how was it growing up in New York? Like, what part of New York are you from?
So I was raised in '70s Upper West Side, New York, which is kind of ground zero for a lot of things, to be honest. But it was very multicultural. You had a very heavy Puerto Rican community at the time. I also had working class white neighbors. I had what do you call it, black literati that were around us. A lot of writers. A lot of mom's friends were writers at the time. It was also right next to Riverside Park, which as a kid was our like haven, so we could actually go to Riverside Park and play, and there was a lot more freedom. Actually, the movie The Warriors was shot near my house, and there are a couple of scenes that were shot near my house, and I remember seeing them shoot it, and that was like kind of like nice to see at an early age. You get to see what a movie set looks like, and it was like in the neighborhood, and all the kids would run down and say, "Oh, they're shooting this movie," and it was a night scene and all. Anyway, so but also a lot of the movement, like hip hop stuff, was not necessarily the Bronx stuff, but at my age, there were a lot of graffiti writers that were in the Upper West Side, and not too far from me was a big building where eventually became Rocksteady Parks. That's like not too far from where I was on 103rd. They're up on 95th and I think Amsterdam or Columbus. I'm trying to remember, but anyway, it's up around that part. So there was a lot of that influence as well, and just really a melting pot of all sorts of. Actually, New York in general, even where you lived, was kind of different. But New York in general, for my generation, there was a lot of cross culture going on, word of mouth. Obviously there was no internet, but a lot of the artistic influences were word of mouth. So somebody would have a comic book that you needed to check out, or when graffiti came along, it was the Black Book. So you need to check out this guy's work, or you could watch the trains, and that was like a big deal. But it was very fertile. I remember being a kid, and I had a lot of inspiration, like tons of inspiration, from the city and from my friends, and it was very fertile area.
Yeah. So with your like, what would you say that your like music tastes are eclectic, and what are your favorite kinds of music? I noticed that you're like really into music.
Well, that's like a whole other journey. But yeah, I mean, I grew up around. Yeah, my dad was a hardcore jazz, like Coltrane kind of disciple, and then his best friends were free jazz, free jazz musicians. So I would, he would take me to the concerts when I was a kid, and I'd fall asleep because it was just, just free jazz. I don't know if you ever really listened to it, but it's kind of, for like 3 hours, right? It's like constant playing, and it's really about the performance. It's really about the structure is kind of out the window. So I was raised with that kind of wall of noise that just put me right to sleep, and it still puts me to sleep, to be honest. And then my mom was like, she loved that music, but then she also loved her, like she was really into funk. So she would put on Earth, Wind and Fire, Isaac Hayes. She would put on the Isley Brothers, Stevie Wonder, of course. So this is a heyday of kind of Black music. And she would just put on the record, and she would just dance in the living room by herself, having her party, and I would just sit there and watch her and listen. And so that was also an influence. So music was really deep in my background. And I mean, as growing up, what I really latched onto was all of that, of course. But then when I really had to make my own decision about what I was latching onto, it was definitely hip hop. Like that was the foundation of what I was, and it really flourished when I was growing up. And then as I got a little older, or kind of on the side parallel to hip hop, was Prince. And Prince has been a huge statement in my education of music. And if you're really into Prince's music, then you will really be into a whole lot of music.
Yeah, one of my brothers is a huge Prince fan.
Yeah. So I guess musically you could say hip hop and Prince, which I guess maybe a lot of people my age could identify with. You know what I mean? But I like all sorts of stuff. I had my classical phases. I mean, I love all sorts of stuff. I would go into a real like folk, folk phase, or just like old school blues and or just like a real weird, electronic synth from like the 1950s, Stockhausen and all these really weird sound wave creators. Like I love all that electronic stuff too. So yeah, it all comes in. But what's interesting is that all that musicality plays into your being an animator. So timing and rhythm is really a lot of the most famous animators will tell you that the only thing that makes you different besides your technique is going to be your internal clock and your internal sense of movement, and rhythm and where you land and all these things. So like boxing has that, any sort of dance obviously has that. The animation, it's the same thing. You're trying to figure out the kind of the swing, right? Like the metric of the action as an animator, and you're trying to figure out what is the best way to execute this movement. So all types of music, and that's why you'll find a lot of animators that are also musicians or that delve into music and even as a hobby, or something. Very musical people.
Were you ever blessed enough to go to a Prince concert?
Oh yeah, many times. Yeah.
I heard they're awesome. Yeah, his ability to play so many instruments and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, no, it was my version of some sort of revival. Like I would go to a Prince concert and I would still be talking about it for 3 days afterwards. And I mean, I could go. That's a whole other interview. And there's a lot of people who have more expertise, but I could talk for hours about. I could probably do a nice class. Actually, it gives me an idea. I think I should do a Prince and animation class. I should do a whole like how Prince and animation connect. But I think that's really an important thing to be a really good animator, is to have a sense of rhythm and timing, or at least to develop one, and to put that into your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you get your sense of style from? Personally, I feel like you're very stylish.
I don't know. Thank you. I don't know. I get it from my animation. No, I don't know.
No, I'm talking about your clothing.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I don't know. I mean, maybe my mom. I guess I don't know. She was very stylish. My mother was very fashion oriented, and I don't know. In LA, I think after I moved here, since in New York, you kind of have different palettes for the seasons, and in LA, you can just kind of wear anything all the time.
Right.
So I figured I'll just wear what I want to wear. I think out here. Well, thank you. I guess we should start with thank you. No, I think it comes from my mom for sure.
I can see it.
Yeah, thank you.
So my Google fingers kind of took me. But what was your involvement with the Fanbro show, which is now For All Nerds? Like,
oh man, you did go deep. You did go deep. So. Fanbros was, so it's kind of a long story, but Fanbros was right, now it's For All Nerds. So basically, my friend and older brother, kind of by family or by connection, his name was Reggie Osei. He was Combat Jack. Combat Jack had a podcast. And so it was an interview podcast with basically with hip hop people, but it was like kind of unleashed. And this is 10 years ago when hip hop podcasting was still kind of, still emerging. And Reggie was doing this incredible show where he would just have these people come in and he would really, his interviewing skills are really great. Anyway, everybody Google Combat Jack. The podcast is amazing. And unfortunately, obviously, Reggie passed away years ago, and still think about him all the time, every day. But he wanted to do a kind of a Black nerd fandom, dealing with comics and movies and all this other stuff, because he himself was always into comic books. And we would always talk, comic books or horror movies or just fandom things, outside of other stuff. So he created this podcast with Ben Hameen, who is now the current host, and Tatiana, the other current host. And there was another guy that they had on. And so I was like, yo, I would be down to do that help out. And they kind of launched it, and I was working, so I didn't really jump in. But at one point he asked me, he's like, "Hey man, can you come produce it?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." So that's how I connected with Fan Bros. I came on as kind of I used to call it the, Space Ghost producer, because I didn't want to be on mic. I don't think I'm good on mic, but I love Tatiana and Ben. I loved Jason, Chico Leo, we call him.
Mm-hmm.
He's been on the show, and I mean, it's necessary. And it was right at the wave when Black fandom, nerd critique stuff was like creeping in to the forefront with Black Girl Nerds and Blurred Girl, and there were a lot of voices that were kind of echoing. Cosplay was, POC cosplay was really gaining momentum, and so I felt like it was a good run, and now they're doing great. I really do, and they're showcasing Black people in a space where that needs to be showcased constantly. So that was my involvement. Basically, Reggie was like, "Hey man, do you want to support this?" And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." So I stayed there, with them for about 3 years. So
Mm-hmm.
3 years. So yeah, about 4 years ago. Yeah, it was great, and I got to really understand the fandom from a different perspective. One thing about being in animation is you don't necessarily connect with the people who watch your show or experience your show publicly, and you're just constantly doing it. And I realized that I needed to kind of understand what the audience was thinking about the stuff that I worked on. Even though it wasn't my show, I really enjoyed, going to the cons and seeing the reactions and going to events. And so working with Fan Bros allowed me to have more access to, more immediate access to the audience that's out there, and especially the Black audience.
Yeah.
Really important to be in tune with, and I feel like now, networks are understanding that a lot more, thanks to Black Girl Nerds, thanks to For All Nerds, and thanks to all these other voices of Black Tribbles was another one, and those voices are really important. I think now, especially in this moment where everybody's like, "Where's the Black voice? Where's the Black voice?" Like, we've been here all along, y'all just checking for it, because maybe our numbers don't look like numbers that you want, but I think it's really important that voice stays there, and that it just becomes, it needs to be normalized. There's no Black fan versus, we all love the stuff just as equally. We may read into it differently, and that's necessary. Especially in animation, that's necessary to understand how image is coded and how it can be deciphered. And so that's how I got involved with them. I know I'm giving you these huge long answers. I'm sorry if
this is about you.
But that's how I got involved with them. Yeah, they're doing great too. I think
they are.
I'm all mad. I'm like, yo, let me get that HBO Lovecraft sweatshirt that y'all got. How y'all get that? And I'm like, maybe I should try and work my way back onto the show. They're doing great though. They're doing really good.
So when you mentioned that he asked you to produce, like some people, we hear the word producer, but we don't really know what it means. So what were you asked to do essentially?
So I didn't even know what it meant. What I would do is gather a show rundown. I would, with Ben, I would go over the show rundown, try to book guests, try and get guests on, try and bring up, just provide material to talk about.
Okay.
So it might have been a comic. Well, actually, Ben's really good with the comics, but I would just provide materials. I would also try and, I would be in charge of booking the studio. We recorded at this great studio downtown. They're still there. Great people. Combat used to record there. The Read, which is also part of that network, Loudspeakers Network. Yeah. So,
I feel like that's how I mostly know about Combat Jack, because I would listen to the Read, and then Combat Jack would like automatically come on next.
Yeah. And funny enough, so trying to just bring it back to animation, around that time, podcasting was exploding on lots of levels. And working in animation, when you're at your Cintiq, when I was working, we would mainly have headphones on, and a lot of times we'd be listening. I'd be either listening to Combat, or I'd be listening to the Read, or I'd be listening to Fan Bros, or or whatever. But it was interesting to be kind of on both sides, to be able to create some media that was feeding the ears of my day job, you know. And so no, it was really cool. And then to be able to interface with some, you know, Black talent that normally I probably wouldn't have access to, that was also, you know, really good. But yeah, just prepping the show, making sure Tatiana and Ben are, you know, they're comfortable, and that Chico was comfortable, and yeah, you know, calling breaks, or when they're coming back, giving them, you know, like kind of when the show's actually recording, notes, and maybe you guys should talk about this. We got to record a live commercial. Just handyman stuff, you know. Really, I wasn't I wouldn't say I was a real producer, like the way, because also we were kind of doing it voluntarily. So
yeah. He was a producer. So where did the Kimson Albert nicknames thing come from, and how did that start? Like for the TV shows where you had all the names
in the credits.
Yeah. And have you read the forums and articles that have talked about this?
I haven't. No, I haven't. So this started way back on Venture Brothers season 1. And I mean, I basically saw, I think it was a Simpsons Halloween episode where they all get nicknames, like James Spooky something. And I was like, I want a nickname. And I just asked Jackson Public, the creator of the Venture Brothers, I was like, hey, is it okay if I use a nickname? And I chose to use a nickname that was a line from the show. So every show would have a line that I liked. And it was funny at first. I think that Doc Hammer, who used to do the credits and do the post, I think at first he was like, what the hell is this? You know? But especially because he had to change it every time, you know. And then it became a thing. And then even Jackson would be like, hey, what do you think about this for your nickname? Or, you know, not really, but I would be like, you know, he would suggest something, or I would come to him and be like, should I do this one or this one? You know, and it was always, there's so many good lines in the Venture Brothers on Adult Swim, for those watching. It was a great show, great experience. And that's where I kind of got the beginning, the idea for that. And then after I moved out here to work on OKKO, Let's Be Heroes, I asked the creator, Ian, I was like, hey, can I keep my nickname thing going? And he was like, oh, yeah, because Ian had worked on the Venture Brothers back in New York, so he was familiar already. And he was like, yeah, do it. And so when I told the producer, I was like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to take a thing from the show and give a nickname. And she was like, at first she was like, all right, cool. And so we helped with it, and, you know, it was really cool. And funny thing though, at the end of OKKO, so we're talking about like 110 episodes. We're talking like almost 4 years. I think legal had an issue.
What?
So yeah, I think that's how it went down. I think legal at Cartoon Network had an issue with me having all these different names. And at the end, I had to sign something that said, you know, this is who I am. Because, you know, technically you have to get that cleared, like if you're using a pseudonym or something. Okay. But it was way late, you know, and after that I was like, on this new project that I'm going to be on, I'm not going to do any, I don't want to cause any like legal issues.
Yeah.
But it was weird because, you know, for literally 110 episodes, it was all good. So, and the same thing, I did the same thing on OKKO. I took something from the show and, you know, used it as a nickname. And I don't know, I just felt like it was a good way to, if somebody's paying attention, cool. You know, most times they're rolling the credits during something else, you know, an animation. And you know, everybody deserves to see their name, right? So why not? Some breadcrumbs. But I did hear that there's some like, I think I did see a Wikipedia page for the Venture Brothers one. I did see that.
Yeah, there's like forums where they're just like You're even start showing concern, like, where did Kimson go?
I'm glad they could get. I'm glad they're. I'm glad they got something out of it. I thought it was funny, and I thought it was just funny, a funny way to even be included beyond the episode. You know what I mean? It's like a nice way to. Again, it's breadcrumbs, digital breadcrumbs. If people follow it, it can be fun. You know?
Yeah.
I like that thing. Yeah.
So, I'm just gonna mention, some of the things that you've worked on. So, Beavis and ButtHead.
Yes. It's the beginning. That was the first job ever.
In the beginning. Lobo, Gotham Girls, The Venture Brothers, KO, Thundercats Roar, Steven Universe, currently on J.J. Villard's Fairy Tales.
Actually, that aired already. Currently on Adventure Time for HBO.
Oh, currently on Adventure Time.
Yeah.
All right.
Welcome to LA. That's what happened when I moved out here. Yeah. The thing is, you can jump on a lot of shows. You can freelance for a lot of shows, and you get credits. You
need to add that to IMDb.
Well, it's just that I think it just went up on HBO Max at the end of June. I think that's when the new special aired. Yeah.
So, like, with your experience, not being a Disney kid, watching a lot of, adult-centered animation, was it like a dream to be working on Beavis and ButtHead, considering the content of it?
It's kind of a funny story. I mean, dream, I was just happy to have a job. That was the biggest thing. I was hired, as an assistant, like layout assistant. Back then we used to still do layout in the house, and I was basically a cleanup person, and I was cleaning up. I was part of we had like 4 small teams of 3, and I was basically out of college and got this job, and it was really interesting. It was like the first couple of weeks, it was just me, a friend of mine, Miguel, and Mike Judge, and a few other people kind of coming in. But we were just kind of looking at each other. We didn't really know what to do. Like we did basic stuff because we hadn't really started episode production yet, and it was just a good time to kind of get to know people, and it was all new for me. So it wasn't a dream till later. I mean, once the show got popular, that's when we were like, oh, okay, and I mean, it got popular while we were working on it, and that's one of those things you can't write that, to be in your early 20s on a show that's popular and you tell people that you're working on it. I mean, it's like, that's the dream. That's kind of the dream. It was a real moment for me, and nothing to sneeze at, and especially the further away I get from it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, it really was a foundation for a lot of my future employment, essentially, or just career in general. But I did feel like it was, I do remember thinking it's good to not be on like Strawberry Shortcake, living in New York, or like, something that I didn't connect with, I feel like that was definitely something to appreciate. There were a lot of things in that production that were very informative to me. It was also my first experience understanding racism in the workplace, like necessarily overt. Sometimes, I was fine-tuned to kind of some of the subtler things. We actually had quite a few Black people on that show, and working behind the scenes, which was great. And somehow, sometimes stuff would bubble up.
Yeah.
And it was kind of interesting, being so young, how that would bubble up. And I was always conscious that animation wasn't, a space that like Black people were kind of the norm, right? So having these other Black, animators on the show and artists on the show was really, it made it really nice and familiar. And then everybody on the show, you know, we all kind of connected and thing. But that was nothing to sneeze at, because I've been on other teams that didn't have that kind of, you know, presence.
Right.
And, you know, to Mike's credit, it wasn't really like Mike doesn't really care about that stuff. To be honest, really doesn't. He's actually he's the opposite of that. And I've always felt that he was embracing all the time. And he, you know, he's, you know, still a very open person, a very positive person, and super talented, obviously, you know. But yeah, when it came to that, it wasn't the Mike. It wasn't from Mike at all. It was like other elements, and I think we were all trying to figure stuff out. You know, that did come up. That did come up.
So how have you had to like navigate being Black in your career, and how is different things manifested in your experience as far as racism?
So working at Beavis was there were a lot of things that transpired where, you know, I would take note, and I was like, is this because, you know, that person's Black, or how come they're calling me the other person's name, right? Like, but consistently. So my name is Kimson. That's Otis. That's Kevin. That's Ben. These are real people. And they're still my friends, so I could use their names. Google the credits for season 2 of Beavis. All these people were there. And, you know, this person would constantly get our names mixed up. And you know, I didn't have any power, but the person who did, you know, did. And funny enough, Mike never got our names mixed up, you know? So it's like, and we don't, at the time, we didn't all look alike. We definitely don't look alike now, but you know, like, I don't know. It was weird. That came up a couple of times, and to the point where I remember Ben Price, who was an animator, still a great friend, had Xeroxed the Black Panther logo and cut out Butthead's face and put it on the Black Panther logo, and then like gave it to us so we could put it up on our desks. And it was just one of these things where in-house, you know, like we kind of knew what was going on. It was actually really funny too, though. Like we could laugh about it, which was great, you know. But one thing I remember having a discussion, I forget if it was Kevin, I remember somebody had told me, they don't see you in that position. It's not even that they even know, like it's unconscious that people in positions of power, or producers, basically, when they have Black talent, white producers that have Black talent don't automatically see the Black talent the same way they see the white talent. Right. And it may not even be on purpose. And I think it was Kevin Lofton told me, you know, it's because it's unconscious. They don't see you doing it. So if they don't see you doing it, they have a problem if you're given that opportunity. And so what happened was Kevin and I had gotten an opportunity to produce a pilot, kind of create and produce a pilot for Bootsy Collins. And Mike Judge specifically had asked for us to do it. And I think as we were doing it, you know, we ran into some of this kind of stuff. Why are they getting, which could be any jealousy, just professionally anyway. Yeah. But it's also like, you know, who are they? Why would they get a chance to do it? And all this kind of stuff. And I really feel like on top of the whatever professional doubts that they might have had about our abilities, there might have been other stuff baked into it. Yeah. And so it's manifested in different ways over my career. But more, I think I was more sensitive to it during the Beavis days and on Beavis, because it was kind of a big deal. And so people are, you know, pulling at different sides of things. They see it successful, so they want their share, or, you know, there's a lot of stuff coming to the surface, and prejudice was one of them. You know? I come from I was in New York. This was in New York. So it's not like, you know, out in California, everybody's really spread out. So you can really go home with your racism in a different way prejudice in a different way than you can in New York, because as soon as you step out on the street,
Yeah.
you're dated by all people, right? So even on that level, there's less of a bubble effect in New York. But I feel like that experience, I was able to, and what Kevin had told, I think it was Kevin, what Kevin had told me about, like, if they can't see you,
Yeah.
even it's going to take somebody to tell them, give this person a chance, as opposed to them naturally feeling like they could give us a chance. That's something that I kept in the back of my head all the time. So every time I got hired. I mean, I remember dropping off my reel. I was talking to somebody the other day. I remember dropping off my reel, trying to get work. You go to a studio in New York anyway, you would drop off your reel back in the day. Email it, you would drop off your reel. And I remember multiple times being told, yeah, the deliveries are in the back, and like, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's gotten that. When you're peddling your wares, you don't come in like the most polished person, and most of the brown people that come in that are into those spaces are usually going to be for, deliveries. And so that's another thing, I did understand how people see you.
Yeah.
Just naturally before you even open up your mouth. But then, like, in hip hop, like when I had friends who worked at record labels, I would walk in and they would be like, "Oh, are you, who are you here to see?" So it was like, you could clearly tell the difference.
A difference in culture.
Totally, clearly tell the difference. In corporate structures were a lot more. You don't really come here all the time. So that was always, it set my lens up to understand and to look and to be clear of certain dynamics and to pay attention to certain dynamics. And the moment that we're living in right now is really interesting, especially on the animation level. What you're doing, what people are doing to highlight Black people in animation, POC in animation, women in animation, Black women in animation. Like, come on, y'all. We need to be doing this on the like, what is it going to take for everybody just to normalize this stuff?
Right.
Why are we a thing?
Yeah, that's the reason I started this platform, was, or at least started posting interviews more, was because there's few of us, but there's more than we realize.
So, which is that's why I really, I was telling you before, I really enjoy what you're doing, because you're highlighting something that young people, at least if they're interested in this, they'll know that there's a history. They'll know that there's a predecessor, and it's not like you're Indiana Jones trying to find this lost, gem of a thing that is the Black animator, and our history is in animation is long, and probably even more storied than we even know now.
Yeah.
So, and again, Black women, the same thing. So yeah, I really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Yeah, because even during Black History Month, I did my last video for Black History Month was Cab Calloway's involvement with animation, where they would trace his dance moves and stuff like that. So we've been here.
So the other thing is, half of the stuff that Black people were doing in entertainment at the time, especially in those days, informed so much of what Warner Brothers was doing at the time, especially the more popular, Looney Tunes, Silly Symphonies, and all that kind of stuff. The more popular ones, Disney not so much, but as far as movement, who was moving like the Black entertainers back in the 30s and 40s? And people are studying movement. Animators study movement, so they're going to look at, of course, they're going to look at Chaplin, but they're also going to look at like the Nicholas brothers. They're going to look at Cab Calloway, who's moving like these. That was completely foreign to them at the time, the way Cab Calloway moved. And for us, it might be normal, right? Like, I was like, oh, my grandfather used to do those moves, or whatever. But when it's presented in a certain way and people don't have access to it, it's like, oh, let's make them move like that, I mean, everybody used to say Daffy was Black. Daffy Duck was Black, right? The rap group even had a song about it,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I love that kind of coding. Sure. I believe it's real. I think it's not just like, I think there's a direct line. I bet you if you asked Tex Avery, who he looked at for some of the reference, I bet you he would have said, I don't know, Bojangles, or some of his animators at least, I'm sure they watch all that stuff.
Even Goofy, like, I mean, if you go to Wikipedia, it's not the one of the words is not the nicest word to use for Black people, but Goofy is based on like Black person.
Oh,
how Black people act. So.
Oh yeah. I actually, now that you mention it, I can see it. I wasn't really a Disney person. But early Mickey, I think he's, he's a rascal. Bosco was Black. You know what I mean? Like, you do your history. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, of course, the little, the guy he's either a thief or somebody could get away with something, or you're just like, yeah, it's all coded.
Yeah. So the go back to being seen. I know for the conversation around after George Floyd's death, of like trying to that rejuvenation and that catalyst of trying to get more people of color into animation or into different industries, because there were just so many different industries that were kind of activated by that. And the immediate response of, well, it should be about this, and what you were saying earlier, it's like sometimes white people, when they see a white person in the position, they automatically assume that they're qualified for the position. But I feel like sometimes, kind of to what you experienced, is when they see a Black person, they automatically assume that they got it because of affirmative action, or that they're not skilled.
The diversity hire. Yeah.
And so there's not that automatic respect that is given to our craft or to our skill set.
Yeah.
So you're constantly questioned.
Yeah, well, because they're gonna, and to some degree, I mean, that assumption is correct. We don't have access to the same pathways to get in that door that a lot of the white, peers have. We don't have extra money for art classes. If you're, I'm kind of generalizing, but I'm gonna say, for the most part, I can't tell you how many times I've been on a panel, or especially back in New York, I would do, I would speak about animation to, in Black circles or whatever sometimes. And every time there would be a parent who's like, oh, my son draws, and I didn't know you could make money. When I was in college, I didn't know I could make money off of animation. I didn't know that you could actually have a career,
Right.
I was just going to be this kind of artsy dude making his own films or whatever. That was the language that I was familiar with at the time. That was the way, the way Mike Judge got Beavis off the ground. He had done a short, and that had blown up on the festival circuit. And then MTV saw it, and they were like, let's make a show, So that's how I thought I thought you had to make your own little film, and somebody wanted to come make a thing about it. Cool. If not, just keep making your own films. Bill Plimpton is like that. That was kind of the standard. The more artistic kind of fine arts side to the animation. But once I found out, I was like, oh, okay. So imagine, and that was me in college already.
Yeah.
At a prestigious college. And so when you're, if you don't have that opportunity, you can't, again, about envisioning and seeing yourself in certain places. A mother would come up to me, my son does this, and and I'm so glad you said this, because now maybe I could send him to art class. And I would always beg and plead, and I would like get them art lessons, encourage them. Maybe it's a phase, maybe it's not, who knows, but if they're really into it, I would always encourage them to do it, because it's just it's sad that we can't even see it.
But then there's the flip side of, that idea of seeing, where there are the majority that are in these positions, but their skills sometimes are less than ours, or there's Black people who are very skilled that have been in the industry for decades and can't get the same opportunities as someone who's less skilled. So there's like both sides to it.
It's that part is the one that gets me really angry, because there are a lot of people who failed up that have been thrown money at, that were, with scandal. And I'm talking about stuff that has nothing to do with talent. I'm just talking about, like, they have incubated, they were protected, and all this stuff. And meanwhile, you're going to second guess, the background designer, because why? you know, like because they're black, or I mean, it's been amazing how especially white men can fail tremendously in the animation industry, and black men, you know, roll the dice. Black women, I don't even, yeah, I don't even know what the barrier is there. You know, hopefully this is all changing. You know,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy when I think about that kind of stuff, and especially to the OGs, like the older black animators, and who've been here forever and who've still working. And you know, Floyd Norman is a great example. I'm sure Dan Haskett, you've had him on your you know, your show, and I mean, Dan is a living legend. I mean, how that guy isn't, you know, I don't know. It's like I'm like, make a statue of that guy, make a statue of Floyd. You know, I mean, give these guys honorary Oscars. They've contributed to some of the biggest, you know, Toy Story show, you know, Toy Story movies, and biggest TV shows and biggest movies ever, and you're not going to celebrate their name over and over. It's like, you know, it's one of those things. But you can't be too angry at it, you know. You just have to be like, all right, well, let's hope that
keep it pushing.
You know, keep moving the opening up the industry enough so that people are understanding these contributions and recognizing them for who they are. You know, the way they recognize their white counterparts. You know,
right?
That's all. You know, but yeah.
So I've noticed that you've worked on some music videos. So what do you like about working on music videos?
I haven't. The last music video I did was kind of a fluke, but I think it's my love for music. My love for, I mean, especially hip hop. Like early on, I would do some freelance work. I always tried to meld hip hop and animation, like somehow. You know, I always tried to have my hand in something, trying to bring in. But the thing about hip hop back then, especially, there was no money, and actually, I did a few jobs where I just didn't even get paid. But it's fine, you know. You know, I think I was really into just the music itself, and I always felt that animation was an expression of the music.
Yeah.
Me, you know, I hear it, I'm seeing it, so I want to kind of, what does that look like? You know, that was my attempts at trying to do some animation for music videos. Was really trying to stylize, I don't know, you know, the artists themselves and bring them, you know, forward. The last one I did was for a rapper named Sean Price, who passed away unfortunately. But I love Sean Price, and you know, that was kind of a weird story. I was working on the Venture Brothers in the daytime, and I was leaving the studio, and I ran into his Sean Price's manager on the train. And I just rolled. I was like in a daze. I don't know. My mind was fried, and I rolled up on him like, "Yo, I want to work with Sean Price. I want to have this idea for a show for him and all this stuff." And like, you know, like looking at me like, "Yo, I'm about to punch you in the face." So like, you know, like, and I was like, "Oh no." I was like, "I know so and so, you know, blah blah blah, Combat Jack, blah blah blah, all this stuff."
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, "Yeah, I'll send you my real." I didn't lead with like, "Yo, I'm an," you know. I didn't, you know. I was like, "Yo, man," you know. I came more like a little more amped. And he looked at me like, so.
Yeah, gotta be careful in New York City.
Yeah, exactly. That started a conversation, and then ended up, you know, I did this Christmas video where it's like I had to knock it out like super quick, and but it you know, they release it every year, or they kind of show it every year, and they showed it at one of Sean's concerts, and I had heard that he liked it, so so I was cool with that. You know, it was like I think it was a way for me to connect with the artists or the music that I liked. You know, it was there's something there. Unfortunately, I haven't done the one. I don't know if I've done one that I could say is like, oh, this purely, you know, Sean is fun. The Sean Price video is fun to me. There's some funny jokes in there, but you know, I'd love to do something a little bigger, more musically, you know, enhanced, I guess. Yeah.
How does it feel to be nominated for Emmys for your work? Like, is there like a heartstring thing there? Or?
Yeah, that's really deep, and all this is new to me since I moved to LA like 4 years ago. my nominations have been for Steven Universe, my work on Steven Universe, which again, it's like I contribute, my part, nothing with the story or, anything that Rebecca has this grand vision, and her and, her team, they're so amazing. Jeff Liu, Joe Johnston, so many of them, they're in the credits, but these people who really wrestled with story and really wrestled with the characters. And I came in just to kind of help a friend and got this great opportunity to work on the show pretty early on, actually. And that was just amazing, to contribute to it. And yeah, I remember because I was freelancing in New York on it, and while they had just started maybe 6 months in, and I remember like I'd get I was doing timing for them, she timing, so I was just doing my part. And I remember like some story stuff when the first fusion was happening, and I was like, what is this? And then I remember calling my friend who was the supervisor on the show, and I'm like, is this, what's going on here? This is different. He was like, yeah, man, this is what's going on, and this is what we're doing, fusion, and Steven's looking for his mother, and like it started morphing. The story went from like this cute kid with his aunties to like a deeper kind of storyline.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to have been even associated with that. So to be honest, the nominations were like kind of unbelievable that I even had that opportunity. And they're nominated this year too, so I hope they win. I'm not, unfortunately, but I definitely, this has to be their year. I'm really hoping they win. It was the one episode I didn't work on,
right?
that got nominated. But no, I mean, it's a dream come true. Like you can't even put that into words. Like, yeah, it's really something that is very moving. And after all these years in animation, to be recognized even a little bit,
yeah,
yeah, it changes your perspective. I don't know. For me, it really changed like a lot just internally. Like I felt like I could like kind of exhale a little bit, but then at the same time, haven't won yet, so still got there's other opportunities. Hopefully, there's more opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So random point of information. I saw a baby name website, and they were listing famous people with the name Kimson, and you were listed. Do you feel like this is an accomplishment?
No, that's why I don't Google myself. That's correct. Are you serious?
Yes.
I'm not. I don't. I think somebody misinformed them. That might be internet fame because maybe my name pops up in credits or something. But that is hilarious. That's payback for all those times I was made fun of in high school. Damn you, bullies.
You're now the representative for the name Kimson.
Yeah, that's funny. Actually, when I first got my first Emmy nomination, I told my dad, because I used to be like, why do you name me Kimson? Why didn't you name me, just a generic name? Because growing up in the States, my name, they were like, because I'm not Vietnamese, it's a Vietnamese name.
Oh, wow, okay.
I'm not Vietnamese, but I'm named after a friend of my dad's who's Vietnamese.
Oh, okay.
So growing up, everybody, I had a million nicknames, which I love. I love to play with names. But when I looked at the certificate, I sent him a picture, and I was like, you're vindicated now. Your choice, like now they can't ever say there was no Kimson here or whatever. Your choice is now solidified.
Right.
Your choice of name is now in the books. So.
Nice.
Yeah, that was actually kind of funny. Yeah, that is random. I had no idea. Thank you for that information. That might require a post of some kind. I mean, if I can open the door for people named Kimson, I'll pioneer that movement.
Right. Nice. So you're just talking about your dad. So you're fluent in French. Like, what do you feel is the importance of families making sure that they speak the languages of their culture that go into who they are? Because I know a lot of Hispanic people who don't speak Spanish. So like, what do you feel is the importance of that cultural bond and learning the language of your father?
That's a good question. I think it was, for me, it was necessary. My mom always wanted me to be bilingual because she always knew that that was um, a secret weapon.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, if you can be bilingual, then you will be ahead of the game. She always felt that that kind of diversity would be very empowering for me, maybe professionally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't. You know, my dad didn't teach me French. He was never really big on me speaking French. It
That
wasn't.
seems to be the thing with some parents.
Yeah, it wasn't. My mom didn't teach me French either. But when I went to live in Paris, that's when I learned French. So like,
Okay.
really, my family over there just talking to me because they didn't really speak English the
Mm.
way, not
Yeah.
currently, not fluently. My dad did, but he wasn't. He didn't like sit me down and say this is this. What
Yeah.
taught me French was comic books. So
Okay.
Asterix and Tintin
Mm-hmm.
and Lucky Luke, which is like Lucky Luke. Those
Mm-hmm.
three comics, I just read those over and over and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow within 2 months, I was speaking French enough that I was going to a French school. I was supposed to go to a bilingual school, but my grandmother knew the principal of a French school, so I got in for free, no testing, no nothing, connections,
Nice.
and yeah, and so I just started school with a bunch of French kids, and so that once you're in school,
Yeah, you
you just
gangbusters like.
at that age, yeah, I was like 9. It was like really easy to pick up, and got better and better, and actually did pretty good at school. So in French school.
So I mean, I guess you were pretty young when you learned it, but did you notice a difference between, I don't know, maybe a connection with your father pre knowing French, post knowing French, or
The connection with my parents wasn't so strong. It was more maybe the connection with um, my family,
extended family? Yeah.
extended family, and especially my grandmother, who I got very close to.
Mm-hmm.
And she understood English, and she didn't speak it as much. But once
Mm-hmm.
I got very close to her, and thanks to her, I learned so much. She was very informative and instructive about a lot of things culturally,
Mm-hmm.
on so many levels. And then I had uncles who would take care of me and bring me on vacation and stuff. So it was really the extended family that really where it really paid off. And then come to find out that the even when I was growing up, the best animation school in the world is in Paris.
Go blanc.
They go blanc, right? So and I had
Did you
just
see my interview with a guy who went there?
I did. I did. I didn't see the whole thing, but I did, and I was so happy that you showcased somebody who did have that training,
Yeah.
especially American over there. And actually, I visited there last year. No, 2 years ago. I got a walkthrough, and it was really nice,
Mm-hmm.
and to see an international group of students.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really great experience. But that also comic books in France and animation in France is seen as an art
Yeah.
higher than the way it was in the States when I was growing up.
Right.
Not as much as Japan, but not, very, very respected though.
Mm-hmm.
And so that having access to that visual language and that visual attitude, I think that helped me as well.
Yeah,
Have
I can imagine.
the view of what animation could be.
Mm-hmm.
And that it really did feed that. Once you start reading the comics that they have over there for adults, I was reading all these adult comics, and
Mm-hmm.
very sophisticated storylines that are in comics, and
Yeah.
it's just a step away from being a movie or from being an animated series.
Right.
So I always had assumed that that would be what I would work on. Some sort of version of an adult, comic book series or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where it played in. I was able to unlock and read things that I probably wouldn't have been able to read
Yeah.
um, if I wasn't bilingual.
So what do you feel is the importance of incorporating your culture into projects when given the opportunity?
I mean, it's extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
It's extremely important if you have the opportunity, like you said,
Yeah.
3D animation is really, it's more of a factory like work.
Yeah. What do you have any dream projects that you would like that you thought of?
Yeah, I do. I have a bunch of ideas for stuff. I just don't have them in a format that's ready to go.
Yeah.
But they need some work, I'm sure.
Like what kind of storylines would you be interested in doing?
Really, for television, I'm really looking at sitcom stuff. I really like sitcom stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's room for a black sitcom.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's room for a lot of black animated sitcoms. I think there's room for a lot of animation.
Yeah.
Animation. Adult animation though, and that's not
Yeah.
like you need to be smoking weed at like 12 a.m.
Right.
and not necessarily like, hey, look how black I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like every other sitcom that can come out and fail, I feel like there's room for my sitcom to fail.
Did you ever watch the PJs?
I like the PJs. The PJs was a little, it wasn't as strong as I would have liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it didn't really last. It didn't find its hook. Like,
Yeah.
it didn't find the real hook of it. But I loved it when it, I love that it exists. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's something I would like to explore. But I think it's really important that wherever you can, that you put yourself into it. If that includes your culture, if your culture is like part of who you are,
Right.
But I think that it's important that you put yourself into it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's even more important to see yourself on the screen. I've actually pitched things where I was asked, why is it a little boy, and I literally had to answer, well, it's because when I was growing up, I liked seeing myself on screen. Why, I didn't even know I had to defend that. but apparently maybe an animal is better in this kind of situation as opposed.
Oh my gosh! I don't understand why they love as animals. That like when they want diversity, make it animals. Like what?
Yeah, I mean that was the default. That was the default. That's the coding language again. If they don't have to be black, but they don't need to be white, so make them purple. Or like you're just like, okay, why is it so offensive? Why can't they just be brown?
Right, and different colors of brown too.
And the one thing I really liked about Steven was that, I don't know if he's white. His dad might be white, but I don't know if Steven, like Steven came out, you know what I mean? Like I love that I could throw that on him, or I could throw it on even KO. Like KO's dad is Mexican, so
okay.
Garcia, Mr. Gar is Garcia, so and then I don't want to give the spoiler alert. Now on HBO Max, you guys streaming now on HBO Max. You guys, it's great. Like it's an amazing ride. Like you guys stick with it. It's an amazing ride. I had so much fun working on that show. Venture Brothers too, all of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if you get a chance to put your personality in there and it works with the show, it works with the story, even if it's visually. These kind of things are really cool. There was I had fun on we did an animated Friday, like the Ice Cube. We did an animated series of Friday, and they actually put me in. They did a caricature of me.
Wow.
Yeah, they put me in. I didn't get to do the voice though. I should have done the voice. But
man, that's a ripoff.
Look at old Beavis episodes. I'm in the classroom too. They did a.
Oh man, that's cool.
And there's a model sheet of me, and it says Kimson on it. I have to find one, but we all were in it. Like Ben was in, all of us who worked on it were somewhere in the classroom.
Oh man, that I need to. I just posted those photos of the 1991 meetup that they had back in the day with all the black animators. So I need you to like find that so I can post that too. Animation history.
Yeah, that could be cool because we were immortalized. If you look at old Beavis episodes, you'll see one of the animators, Ben, he's in there. He wears black and he's got the headphones. His head is always like moving.
Nice.
It's Ben, yeah. We always put ourselves. was pretty cool. Yeah, it was.
Just those little things you probably don't notice or don't realize, and it's like
Yeah.
inside jokes for you all.
Yeah, and that's half the fun. I mean, you talk to any animators, they'll always be like, "Oh, we put this here, and that's an inside joke and inside joke." But yeah, you know, I mean, if you look at Beavis and ButtHead's class is quite diverse for being, you know, rural Texas or wherever they're supposed to be.
Right.
You look at it, you're like, "Oh, okay, no, it was cool." So yeah, put yourself in it. That's one way to do it. Just put yourself as a character.
Yeah.
I'm actually in the Venture Brothers pilot too. I'm waiting for the train.
Man,
Waiting.
it's like a Where's Waldo? We need to start a game. Where's Kimson?
Yeah. Well,
that could be another
people know those shows. They need to know those shows first. But yeah. But that's really important. Just make yourself a character in the show if you can. You can get away with it. That right there changes everything, you know.
So I don't know what you consider yourself at your level of your career, but on the way to veteran stat, I don't know. But as a person who's been in the animation industry for a while, like, have you made a decision of like your role in Black animation, or like for Black people in animation? Like, do you have a goal of?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't have half the accomplishments that I want, nor do I have as some of my, you know, contemporaries or people. You know, I came out to move to LA 4 years ago with a great opportunity. But, you know, the industry in New York and the industry in LA is completely different, and in my experience. And so I feel like what I can contribute to out here, and I'm trying to play more of an active role, is to provide, you know, visibility.
Yeah.
You know, working within certain things, certain initiatives. And, you know, I know that some people don't want to do that, you know, don't want to be on a committee and don't want to talk to white folks who need to learn about this. And in my private life, I'll be a lot more like, I'm not educating you. But when it comes to an opportunity in the workplace, I do think about my 20-year-old, 22-year-old self. And I'm hoping that I can contribute a little bit so that the 21-year-old, 22-year-old who's coming out of college or even younger, you know, being a Black person, they can at least say, okay, somebody's been here before. I'm not like, I don't need to pioneer this, or just feel comfortable, even if they are pioneering something, because even just getting your first job it's already overwhelming. But the race thing is always, you know, underlying all of it, right? And so you're sensitive to all those things. If I can contribute a little bit to making that stress a little less, then I feel like just even as a symbol, you know, it's okay.
Yeah.
And because the industry itself is so varied in what people can do and where people fall, and there's TV and there's feature and there's 3D and there's 2D and there's modeling, and, you know, I mean, there's a million different jobs you could have. That said, most of the time the people speaking about those jobs aren't Black people. Most of the time the people who are expressed, you know, I'm so glad a lot more Asian voices have been elevated in those spheres. But again, until you're showcasing and shining light on these people, nobody knows that they exist. I love that you know, the second unit of Star Wars, the last Star Wars, was done by a Black woman. You know, and that's, how would I know that? You know, it's like JJ elevated that, like voices elevated that, but you know, I'm wondering how many Black women know that was done. You know, that exists. You know, or that's the case. And so I feel like if I can do that even a little bit, I think I can. Then I'm doing something more than just my shitani or doing my job, you know.
Yeah, that's why for BlkWmnAnimator it's important to have this video aspect, because it could have been a podcast, but I want people to see people who look like them. So.
And just get to know. I mean, you interviewed some real legends, and it's like you're. I think for us, for Black folks, we need to pull back the curtain. We know that we can sing and dance. We know that we can play ball. We know that we can be, you know, owners of companies. But when it comes to the arts, it's really still a little nebulous. It's a lot less than it was when I was growing up. But to actually have a job in animation and for your family to think that you could actually have a job in animation. I'm
Yeah.
always talking to somebody's nephew. I'm always like there to be like, oh, so what do you want to do? Well, I'm always the cheerleader. Make it happen.
I got somebody from high school in my inbox right now asking me to give resources for her daughter. She's like, I want to see if she's interested in animation.
All the time. And then I get my friends, black and now, white friends from all, because animation is just not something that parents think is an opportunity.
I would say you don't have a neighbor that's a next door neighbor that's an animator. So
no. And most of the time, people who know that that work in animation know that they're artistic and they know that they were probably going to end up in animation at some point. Mm-hmm. You don't like study to be like a dentist and then fall out of that and I'm going to start cartoons. Although
there are a lot of people who've changed careers.
And that's what I was going to say. I've been in it long enough that I've met those people now, where animation is their second career. Meanwhile, it was all I knew I wanted to do since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I think
they're probably forced by their parents, like, get this job that makes money.
Yeah. I even within animation, I've seen people really change lanes and really excel at a whole new lane, whether it be production or somebody who was just, designing, and then they applied to Disney and took off and became a director. I mean, all sorts of wonderful, stories of creating careers, and opportunities and real impacts on the culture.
Yeah. Let's see. So, if there was a documentary about yourself, what things would you like to highlight outside of your work in animation?
I would say the cultural aspects of my upbringing and education.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the uniqueness of kind of being in two cultures, but understanding what it is to be Black in America, even though, I have this other experience. My mother was very clear when I was very young. She was like, people are not going to like you for who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like 4 when she told me that. And it's interesting though, she didn't say because you're Black. She said because of who you are. So I sometimes I use it
a little bit sparingly.
You know what I mean? I'll be like, well, you know what? I'm already prepared. I got that. You know what I'm saying? I would also, I think I've never thought about how to highlight stuff that I've done because I never really think about it. I just want to keep making stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think that is overall that I've seen how valuable that is now in my life to be, have experienced all those things. I think that's something I would highlight, those experiences, those voices,
right.
The many different voices I was exposed to, when you have a Black experience, a tradition of civil rights in your family and education, fighting for, justice, and then having relatives who died in the Holocaust. Those are two things that not so many people, some of my friends clown me and they call me Lenny Kravitz. I'm like, I wish. But anyway, so there's that I think is something interesting that doesn't get highlighted enough for people to normalize. Like, that's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
People should just know that exists and many variations on that. So I think I would highlight that. First of all, I would never really do a documentary on me. I would probably do a mockumentary. Nice. I would do a mockumentary, and it would be about. I'm soft pitching right now. It would be about a 70s disco producer who wants to open up an animation studio because he feels like disco and animation should be one entity. And he wants to make a 3-hour disco extravaganza animated. That's what I'm pitching that right now. Copyright it.
If anybody wants to work with Kimson, let them know.
But it's a mockumentary about that. We're not actually making the movie. We're making a mockumentary about the making of this movie.
Ah, yes.
So we might need sequences that we, Anyway, it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
So what do you hope for the future of animation as far as innovation, storylines, and characters?
So I'm really excited about the storytellers that are using Black storytellers that are using animation to tell their own stories, whether they be, quote unquote Black stories or not. I feel like if a Black creator is telling a story, it's a Black story, no matter what's in it,
Right.
So I'm really excited about that. I really like the idea that African countries are establishing many animated studios. The brothers in Japan who opened up their anime studio.
Yep.
My friend, LaShawn Thomas and Carl Jones. This is TV. I'm talking about TV, not feature, but really excited to see what they're always working on and what they're about to, say and express. So I'm excited about the moment. I'm excited about, animation takes a long time. So I'm excited about the next 2 years to see what surfaces. I would be more excited if I knew that, young Black kids could see animation as an industry that could support them, or that it's a possible medium to express themselves in. Art, animation, all these things, to me, they're kind of connected from a macro perspective. But if they want to deep dive into animation, specifically,
right,
I would say I'm interested in hoping that the storytelling reflects many different stories.
Right.
So much of historical things that are being unearthed and discovered about Black history in this country, Black history in other countries, and then folk tales. There's a lot of things I would love to see showcased through animation. I think that'd be really, really exciting to see those things. And even in the past, some great kind of ethnic stories, but they're all led by white creators. Not a bad thing, but I would love to see somebody own the way we do in music. We own our tradition in music. I would love to see us own our tradition in animation too.
Yeah.
Our storytelling, our stories, they can take on many different aspects. It could be adult, it could be kids, it could be preschool, it could be everything in between. As long as we're involved, as long as we're in control of the narrative, I think it could be really exciting. And it's happening. And the thing is, not a moment, a movement, right? We've been saying. So regardless of how everybody else is seeing it, we still got to keep going. We have to be our own studio. We have to be our own satellite studio, essentially.
So what do you hope Black animators do in this current landscape that you wish you had have done, particularly with access to technology?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of getting it done. I don't know. The resources question is an ongoing one. Do I have enough money? Do I need to do a Kickstarter? Do I do this? If you know the basics of animation, you can just do it yourself.
Right.
And
nothing is stopping you.
Yeah. I come from that school. So from the school where you just do it yourself and you kind of make it yourself. And if you don't make it, the only person you can blame is yourself.
Right.
Mike did it. Mike Judge did it. Almost everybody I know who got some success, they did their own pilot, and they slaved it.
Definitely.
So it's kind of like music when you make your own demo tape in your basement. You can do animation, and now you can do it for nothing. Yeah, exactly. I mean, what is it? The Adobe Cloud Suite. You could do a feature film. It's just dedication and keeping your head to the grindstone. I think. I wish I would have had all these tools back then. I would have done so many things. Thing is, now I kick myself because I don't have the same drive that I did when I was 21. But maybe it'll kick in. I'm kicking myself to get that back in.
Yeah.
But it's exciting.
Yeah. How can people get in touch with you?
I don't know if I want people to get it done. No, I'm just kidding. Let's just leave this right here. No. I mean, honestly, I don't really have a lot of social media presence. I'm at Kimsonian on IG. That's basically it. That's kind of my outlet for showcasing what I work on and just my own personal stuff. I'm not in a, maybe it's bad topic on my part. I should be plugging something right now, but the only thing that's basically where I can be right now.
People mostly want your knowledge.
Yeah, and that I'll IG is where I do a lot of kind of back and forth. And yeah, that's basically it. I really want the younger generation, especially of Black women and just Black animators in general, to really, don't be scared and take the industry over. I really want them to flood the gates, kind of thing, and just knock down doors and make your own stuff. Don't, if somebody says no, just go and do your own thing, and you'll learn so much by doing your own thing that I think you'll probably be ahead of the game if you ever want a studio job. Studio really only wants you to do what they need for you to do in their pipeline.
Right.
But, your freedom of expression should be your own, and you shouldn't have anything separating you from that.
Right.
So do what you can, do what it takes to get your equipment, do what it takes to afford this, even if you have to work in a pizza shop or do whatever you have to do to get the money, to get the material you need to tell your story, and then also learn how to tell a story. Teach yourself how to do that, or immerse yourself. Always be learning.
Yeah.
I'm always still learning from so many people about what I do, what I want to do. As long as I've been in the industry, I'm still looking for something. Still trying to say something. I think that's important. I think that's always something that keeps me going.
Cool. So thank you, Kimson, for coming on the Black Woman Animator YouTube channel. And to everyone out there, I want you to like so I know it's real, comment and tell me how you feel, subscribe to Citadel, and sign up for post notifications to show your zeal. And I'll see you next video. Peace.